Good evening, listeners, brave navigators of the enigmatic and the concealed. Have you ever felt the pull of the unanswered, the allure of the mysteries that shroud our existence? For more than a decade, a unique comic publisher has dared to dive into these mysteries, unafraid of the secrets they might uncover. This audacious entity is Paranoid American. Welcome to the mystifying universe of the Paranoid American podcast.
Launched in the year 2012, Paranoid American has been on a mission to decipher the encrypted secrets of our world. From the unnerving enigma of MK Ultra mind control to the clandestine assemblies of secret societies. From the awe-inspiring frontiers of forbidden technology to the arcane patterns of occult symbols in our very own pop culture. They have committed to unveiling the concealed realities that lie just beneath the surface. Join us as we navigate these intricate landscapes, decoding the hidden scripts of our society and challenging the accepted perceptions of reality.
Folks, I've got a big problem on my hands. There's a company called Paranoid American making all these funny memes and comics. Now, I'm a fair guy. I believe in free speech, as long as it doesn't cross the line. And if these AI-generated memes dare to make fun of me, they're crossing the line.
This is your expedition into the realm of the extraordinary, the secret, the shrouded. Come with us as we sift through the world's grand mysteries, question the standardized narratives, and brave the cryptic labyrinth of the concealed truth. So strap yourselves in, broaden your horizons, and steel yourselves for a voyage into the enigmatic heart of the Paranoid American podcast, where each story, every image, every revelation brings us one step closer to the elusive truth.
Another episode, Paranoid American Podcast. If I'm slacking a little bit, it's not because I haven't been putting effort into one of these shows. It's because I'm literally trying to do a million things at once. And this is number 1,000,001, is we're going to talk to Jon Del Arroz. And he's got a huge catalog of comics and books, and I'm going to pick his brain. And you're going to watch me pick his brain live on air here. But he owns Fandom Pulse, which is an online site that gets into sort of like comics and movies and TV. We're going to talk about that. And he's also got a whole litany of books and comics, including one called Overmind that's really interesting. So before I start splurging into all the details, let me just let Jon say hi to you guys and where you guys can find him.
Hey, what's going on? I am Jon Del Arroz, and I'm on everything. YouTube, Twitter. Is it Twitter? Do we still call it Twitter?
Don't dead name X. It's
my bad. I assumed it's gender or something. And I've got my own web store, which I'm trying to get most people over there or on the Subscribe Star at this point, in terms of how things go, because Amazon's getting a little weird these days, which we can get into if you want to talk about later. But I have lots of books and comics. I'm just constantly churning out new art and new news stories. I'm also a contributor over at PJ Media, so lots of little places to go.
Well, you just mentioned that Amazon's getting weird. Let's just get into that right now. Like, what do you mean Amazon's getting weird?
Well, it's been getting weird over the past few years, but I've seen instances of more conservative creators having their like pre-orders pulled. There's a couple authors last year that they had hundreds of pre-orders for their books, and Amazon refunded all of them and then took away their pre-order ability right before the launch. And so stuff like that's happening. One of my buddies is a publisher, and he got his publishing house taken down for a bit. They eventually corrected it once he threatened them with lawyers, but just strange stuff like that's happening. Amazon used to be the Wild Wild West. You used to be able to go on there and say, I've got a book that's a lot like Warhammer 40K. It's called Justified. And Warhammer 40K fans are buying that a lot over the past few days because that's been the news story, and I've been covering it. And you used to just be able to pop up on there. So if you're searching Warhammer 40K books, like my book might get recommended if a lot of people who were into Warhammer 40K bought Warhammer 40K. It was like the original data mining collecting thing where, you know how it is. Like you talk about some product like, Clorox bleach or something, and then suddenly you're getting ads for Clorox bleach all over your screen, right? And Amazon was like the original one of doing that, but it was kind of contained within its own website. Like what you bought, you would then, they'd kind of profile you based on that and give you recommendations, and random authors would have a shot at getting up there. It was totally random for a number of years, and you just get found. And I'd get days where I'd get, dozens of book sales, and I'd be like, where did this come from? And it just came from random Amazon recommendations. Well, the company decided to get greedy, as it usually does. And all those recommendation spaces, they changed to be paid ads. And at first it was all right with that too, because the ads weren't that expensive. You'd spend 5 cents, 10 cents on an ad slot, and your book would get out there, and you'd sell a $4.99 ebook or something. It'd be fine. I mean, even if 1 to 10 people actually bought the book who clicked on it, totally good. Well, then the corporations got in on it, and those ad slots are now $1, $2, $3 per click. Well, you're never gonna earn out at that point. And so what happens is indie authors started getting suppressed because now those corporations all have all of those slots occupied, because they're the only ones with robust advertising budgets like that to be able to do this. And so now Amazon is something where you can't even find things. And it's really difficult to even search things now. I don't know what they did with that part of the algorithm, but I mean, you've probably been on there lately trying to, being like toilet paper, and then suddenly like, an iPhone pops up. It's like, why is this on here? I was searching for
just in case
paper.
you need one, because a lot of people use that in the bathroom.
Going to wipe your butt with the iPhone.
I mean, they would prefer that you did, probably. You'd go through it quicker. If you
the
are going to do that anyways, use my promo code and get a 10th gen.
That's right. So yeah, Amazon got weird. It's kind of an unfriendly, hostile place for indie authors now. And so I'm trying to move people over to Subscribestar, which is basically like a Patreon alternative. Patreon is very anti-free speech. If you guys aren't aware, they kick people off. They kicked me off of there saying I, promote hate speech or something.
What was the specific infraction there? Because I do use Patreon, and I am a little bit worried that they might be too woke, but I don't know.
They just said that you're promoting hate speech, and I said where, and they wouldn't answer me. They said refer to the terms of service. Your account's closed.
I have run into a number of issues. Originally, I had this marked as not safe for work Patreon page, and then they'd suppress you from the results at all. Like, you'd have to know exactly to go to one of those pages. And then after I got it undone, I had a drawing of like a dude at a beach, and I guess because it showed the dude's nipple, they kept flagging the account as like not safe again. So I don't know if it's just like overzealous AI bots, or if they just don't care, or if they're like intentionally targeting people. Maybe it's just all three. Maybe it's the trifecta.
It's all of the above. It's all of the above for sure. And so we're dealing with that. And I've moved to Subscribestar. You might want to look at that site and consider moving some folk over to there, because they're pretty good for free speech.
So there's a thing that I'm completely ignorant of, and I'll give you an example, but like, I tend to think I understand stuff, and then I realize I don't. So I've got a children's book that I started a while ago, and it's called Connect the Dots: The Confounding Conspiracy of Chemtrails. And I was working with an artist and a writer on it, and I knew that like in the comic space, there's a lot of people that definitely lean heavily. I wouldn't even say like liberal. I would just say they lean heavily away from conservatism. Like, whatever flavor it is, it usually leans away from that. At least with like a majority of people, that if I just like threw a dart at like a random wall. So the person I was working with pitched me this idea, one of the characters being super woke. And my whole life, I always thought like, if you're asleep, then you're like one of the sheep. And then if you wake up, you're watching David Icke and Alex Jones and everything. So we were working on this script for a month or so. And like, we kept conversing, and it's like, oh yeah, this character is going to be super woke. And I keep thinking like, yeah, they're going to think that 9/11 was an inside job. And then when the script got delivered, I was like, what the hell is this? And we got into a little bit of an argument. And I guess I realized at that point that the word woke had completely changed in context and meaning and everything. And it meant something way different than I thought that woke meant. And they were doing it like as like a pro woke thing. So my understanding is that Comicsgate is kind of like the antithesis of that, like insertion of woke dialogue and stuff in the comics, but I don't know. I have no idea. I see people aligning themselves with Comicsgate and throwing the hashtag. Like, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Do I want to get on board? Like, what the hell is it?
It's like an old hashtag at this point. And so it during the culture wars, like in the early days, right after the great meme war of 2016, if you guys remember that. Which was right after Gamergate of 2014, if you remember that.
Which gave us Mayo Yiannopoulos or whatever, right?
Yeah, Gamergate was like the first big hashtag movement where it was used, and then everybody was a part of it, and then there was a bunch of infighting, and then it kind of burned to the ground, and then Gamergate is still talked about to this day.
Well, they got an
comics,
SVU episode, so they're in lore forever.
I know. Comicsgate gets a lot too. It gets a lot of random publicity, but really on a smaller scale because nobody cares about comics compared to video games. And so Comicsgate started in 2017. It was a hashtag that was popularized by myself and Megan Fox from PJ Media at the time. And she's doing LawTube stuff now. Megan Fox is wonderful, wonderful work. She's streaming a lot with like That Umbrella Guy, and they're doing they uncover some crazy stuff. But she was covering my comic stuff at the time, and we found there was a YouTuber who went by Diversity in Comics, and that was his YouTube handle at the time. Now he's Comics Matter with your boy Zach. And I uncovered a secret Facebook group where all these comic professionals were in there. They were conspiring to get him kicked out of New York Comic Con because he was going to head over there because they didn't like his reviews on the internet. And they said some nasty stuff. They were like, he's a veteran, so we're gonna trigger his PTSD and goad him into throwing a punch, stuff like that. And there were some big names in there, and they were all working at Marvel and DC. And that was like an attempt to silence a critic by getting him harassed out of a large comic convention because they didn't like what he said about the books, which were woke books, and that's why he was criticizing them. And so that I exposed that and put it out onto Twitter at the time. Megan Fox wrote it up in an article, and we started using the hashtag Comicsgate to talk about that, and then other instances that were involved in problems with blacklisting in comics and people getting politically targeted in comics because the industry is just this extreme leftist place where you're just not welcome if you have any kind of dissent whatsoever. And so that's how it kind of came to prominence. And then it's the Green Lantern artist Ethan Van Sciver started using it a few months into it, and kind of became associated with his brand after that. And then it became associated with the movement that was kind of rebelling against mainstream comics as multiple people who were making their own comics started using that hashtag over the next like 2-3 years. And so that's been going and going and going. I would say in 2024, like the hashtag's kind of dead at this point. So it's like, it doesn't matter whether you use it or not. 2-3 years ago, if you repped that hashtag, you'd get piled on by random woke people. Like, it was kind of weird. Just how much they just hated people because of a hashtag.
I missed the wave.
You're over the wave's over.
I
can't get
the hate
point,
just
right?
from random. Okay,
it's a little beyond that. Yeah.
I'm a little bummed. That's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It happens.
Yeah, I'm the last to again. Like I thought woke meant someone believed in 9/11 being an inside job. I had no idea that woke was kind of. And so I guess correct this part for me, or let me know. Is this just mean like you don't want any gay people or trans people in comics? Like you don't want Superman to be gay? Is that
black?
Like
yeah. No blacks, gays, or women. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
We're gonna go and make our own comics.
Stay out of my hobby.
So it's basically the SVU episode, just minus all the irony.
Right. Kind of, except for, and no, this is just about like, look, I'm trying to read my freaking Spider-Man comic. Like, why is it like a bunch of gay sex on my page here that I was trying to read a thing about him beating up a dude in an octopus suit? Like, this is like, leave me alone. That's really what it is, right? And they won't. They really pause these storylines to like lecture you about things. The most recent Tom King's Wonder Woman has like Wonder Woman tied up while this guy's like reading a Bible verse at her, and he's obviously Trump, not Trump. They even call him the shadow president, and he has a lasso of lies. that he makes you believe untruths, right? It's
pretty
so
deep.
stupid.
This is like,
I know. It's like, yeah, right.
Juxtaposed with like the lasso of truth. It's not on the like right on the nose or anything. I like that.
It's great. And so he's reading her the Bible verse that women should be subservient to their husbands, and she stands up proud as a straw, and she goes, "I do not believe in your God." And it's like, oh, cool. So now you're openly anti-Christian with Wonder Woman. This is cool. Yeah, this is.
Was this the issue that had like the greeting card? You open it up and it actually plays music, and it played like a Beyonce song, I think. Like who
Oh,
runs
really?
the world?
I didn't hear about that one. No. Yeah.
I mean, if they haven't done that yet, that's a free one out there for all the woke.
Sounds
DC.
terrible.
And just counterpoint, hasn't Superman always been gay?
No, Superman's as straight as it gets, like Lois Lane, man, and he's got
Really? Because I thought
Yeah.
he was kind of like not
Lois
picking
Lane.
up on the cues for the longest time there.
No, she wasn't picking up on the cues that he's the same person as Clark Kent just for taking glasses off. That's all on her, So
Maybe. I don't know. I
Yeah.
always felt like Superman's always been gay, like from day one. Like the day that he came here from Krypton, he was gay according to like human standards.
I thought they kind of said that about Batman because he's got the kid he's grooming, right? I mean, that was more of a weird thing. But
well, yeah, I guess the
yeah.
Batman and Robin thing, and like in a non-joking way, that always was a little bit odd.
Like,
and I thought, at least in the Adam West series, it felt like they played into that. Like they're totally gay, but we're gonna sort of like
really
never
weird.
address it. But it's totally there. Like there is no way that it wasn't.
Now, if you look back though at culture in the 1940s and 1950s when the pulps were kind of made, though. Like none of the stuff, like people weren't obsessed with just like throwing just like pornographic sex acts onto everything at that point. So the culture was not just sitting there thinking sex all the time, like it's been forced upon us ever since the internet age, really. Back then, everything was just innocuous. And like they were actually, the writers were sitting there thinking, okay, well, this comic book here on the stands is going to be bought by a parent for a 10 to 12-year-old boy. And that 10 to 12-year-old boy is my target audience. What's his dream going to be? Well, if Batman's out there, his dream's going to be going out there and fighting along Batman's side and kicking ass with him. And so it is that simple. There's nothing like untoward about it or like none of those thoughts crossed these people's minds back then. It's just our sick, degenerate society today kind of putting what looks like if we saw a dude dressed in tights with, carrying a kid around, we'd be like, there's something wrong here today, because there probably would be. But that's not, back then it is just like looking at like what would a 10 to 12-year-old boy actually want out of this. And that's it's a very different thing. It's sad we've become so jaded, I guess.
I mean, I partly blame SNL because weren't they the ones that had the ambiguously gay duo that immediately just made any two dude superheroes in spandex that spent a lot of time together felt like it was just an extension of that like parody.
Yes, absolutely.
So what do you feel about spandex superhero comics versus non-spandex superhero comics?
Well, as far as what I've done, I've got 4 major heroes, I guess, or maybe 5, but I've got 3 superhero books. And I've done it in a variety of ways. Like one of them, I actually took a character from the 1950s and I revitalized him because he was in the public domain, and I was reading the comics, and it was such a ridiculous concept. I was like, oh my gosh, this is really funny. And so the concept is the guy is immune to explosives. So knowing this, he like just chucks sticks of dynamite all the time. And so like the character would like, and he's so good at it, he'd like chuck a stick of dynamite at a criminal with a gun, and like the dynamite would explode like to like knock the gun out of his hand. Like, and like, it's really, I mean, pretty amazing. And it got even weirder because as that character went for a few issues, like he'd start throwing the sticks of dynamite behind him to explode. So it'd propel him through the air like he's flying. And then the way it was drawn, it looked like he was farting his way through the air. So I thought that was hilarious. And so I decided to revitalize him. And so I took that concept and he was in like a pretty spandexy look. And so I actually just even more spandex it just for the like, the humor element of it. As far
what
as
does more
like,
spandex look like?
More spandex. Let's see. Let me see if I can find can you pull up my screen on this deal?
Yeah. So
let me see if I can find it. I can find an image on this. The other
superhero spandex is usually like a full body ordeal.
Yeah, this one's a full body ordeal. I don't remember what the original costume looked like. But here is here's one. When you get into exploding dynamite stuff, here's the image I actually used for my cover for this, which is on a comic news website from a few years ago. And so this is I guess what more spandexy would be. Yeah. So I went pretty, and he's got sticks of dynamite on his belt. So
Okay, he's got a little bit of a Shazam look to him.
Yeah, I went for that with it just because it went. That's very, very campy superhero. But if you look at let's see, Flying Sparks maybe. She's a female superhero, so it automatically looks a little less campy, and she's kind of just like in an ice skating outfit with some like leggings, right? So that's not so bad. And the male character in there, he's of that opinion where like, well, this is stupid to go around wearing spandex, like. He's like, I want to actually conceal my powers, so he just like doesn't go by a superhero name, just wears a suit like for business, and like he only uses his powers like when people can't see him. And so it's like it's quite the opposite. Like that's if you were actually trying to hide your secret identity, you wouldn't go out there and put on like a bright thing broadcasting things to yourself, right? And that's kind of his thoughts on that. So I'm all over the gambit with the characters I have.
So I've had distributors tell me in the past that if you really want to hit the mainstream comics, that it's got to be superhero, like spandex superhero. Is that still true today? Because that might have been a long time. That might have been like 7 years ago or something.
I think even then it was tough because like if you're competing like for the space. So I've got Flying Sparks there. It's like, well, that's great. Buy my superhero book, and they're like, well, I'm buying Batman. And it's like you're competing against Batman. Well, it's like, why do I buy this over Batman? Well, the story's better. But the people are so ingrained that superhero equals Batman. It's like, what do you do, right? And so they're flooding the market with Marvel and DC with like 80, 100 titles a month each. So you're really competing against that. I found when I made a science fiction graphic novel, which is called Overmind, and it's not superhero, that actually sold way better than my superhero stuff because the superhero market's so saturated. So as far as the indies go, when people want to read indies, most people who are comic readers who read independent stuff are kind of turned off by superheroes, and they're kind of annoyed by it. And it sucks because Marvel and DC are at a point where, they can't even like really develop the characters or do anything new with the characters or do anything interesting with the characters because they're all set for movie rights, and they're trying to keep those characters still there for 30 years from now.
Well, they can swap genders and sexual preferences.
They can do that. That's fine.
They can do it.
Yeah. That's their one trick they have at this point. And they only do that so they get a news article written about them so that they get some like hate buys.
It works, man. It's like how Disney re-releases their crappy remakes just so that people go back and watch the old catalog.
That's right. And so that's it. But it's hard to compete against that. And so the independent people who are sick of that and want to read independent works typically are like, nah, I'm burnt out on superheroes. I want to try something different. And so it's interesting. I still do a mixture of both because I like superheroes. So it's like I want to write some, especially since none of these people are actually presenting, real truth, justice, and the American way values anymore. It seems that avenue of the market might be a little bit open. And it is to some extent. I mean, it's working pretty well.
So even within, like, I guess what is, I'm going to say the comics gay community, but knowing that that's like dead naming like a 3-year-old thing now, it's like evolved into its own thing. If you're not talking about Ethan, then it might mean something else entirely. But now the new thing is like Rippaverse and all the hate about Eric July and people angry or at least criticizing about 3D art and stuff like this. So like where are you? Are you like pro Eric July, pro Rippa, anti Rippa? Like what are the factions? Are there like more than just the pros and antis? Is this its own little mini comics gate?
It's interesting because there's so many little indie factions. Like there's like Kickstarter backers who like superheroes. There's Kickstarter backers who like, comics with like naked women.
Shout out.
Kickstarter
back me at adultoccult.com. One of those adultoccult.com. I love it.
There's there's people who buy on Amazon. There's people who follow Arcaven and Vox Day. So I mean, the internet's so big, but in the Comicsgate sphere itself, like it is so myopic that like they don't even see that there's this website Webtoon, and Webtoon gets like millions of clicks every month, and like they pay their creators through advertising. And there's people who get Patreons or subscribe stars going off of those that are making thousands of dollars a month. And people in Comicsgate and in these circles don't even know they exist. They never think about them, never talk about them. It's only like this or this. And I blame comic book people in general. I know I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot with my own audience to some degree, but for some reason, like there's an element of a comic book person, the comic book guy from The Simpsons. You remember him?
Yeah, he was like the worst character ever, though.
Radioactive man #1. Yes. And he was just obnoxious, a fat slob, and just like overly opinionated about everything to the point where it was annoying. And that is a lot of comic people, to be honest. And so you kind of get a lowest common denominator there, because comic books are not an intelligent medium. You're on average, you're looking at picture books. That's why they were geared towards kids at first, because it's like, well, maybe we can sneak kids into reading this. And they still do. I mean, they've got those scholastic ones like Dog Man or Diary of a Wimpy Kid or whatever, which are kind of like half comic books. And
Shots
those
fired to all the Diary of a Wimpy
really
Kid
well.
fans out there.
Yeah, they do really well. They do really well for kids. And so a lot of the people who read comics who are like 40 and 50 now are just like people who couldn't read real books, I guess. And not all of them, not you, whoever's watching, buy my book. But a lot of people are. And so you get a lot of these very low IQ, very what's the word I want? I'm going to get in trouble. Autistic people pounding those keyboards angrily about like Superman's left thigh was drawn wrong, right? And it's like, well, why are you so focused on Superman's left thigh if you're not gay? But anyway, it's really weird. And so you get that, and so they're very binary thinkers by nature. So it's like, okay, it's like, where do you stand, Marvel or DC?
Marvel. That's an easy one.
See, well,
I know that was rhetorical, but I had to answer that because it was a underhand.
And I'm a hipster, so I go Valiant Comics, right? So that's how it kind of goes.
Yeah, okay. Dark Horse. We can play this game. Yeah,
we can play this game. Neither the red or
now comics. There's some like Anyways,
that's right. Keep going. You can go down the list, but most of them are very binary thinkers. So then when you get into this little battle over the corner of the internet, it's like, are you Ethan Van Sciver or are you Eric July? And it's like, I like both of them and I'm friends with both. You can't. That's not an acceptable answer. And that's
infighting though, right? Because Ethan and Eric are themselves in a bubble that like everybody else kind of hate. Yes. I mean, I'm oversimplifying this, but it's like the vast majority of the mainstream, the big 2, the big 4, the big 6, whatever, is kind of like the antithesis that spawned Ethan's Comic Gate and the Cyberfog like resurgence and the Rippaverse in its entirety, right? But then now within that little bubble of like people that are outside the mainstream, now there's infighting among them, and that's the part where I'm not sure I fully understand. Like things are thrown around like, oh, it's jealousy, oh, it's this. It's got to be something a little bit deeper to it, but I got no idea because I'm beyond an outside observer. I don't even know half the names that are involved.
I don't pretend to know motivations. I mean, that's really something to ask them. It is maddening though, because when you're when these 100,000 plus sub YouTuber guys are fighting and you're in that space and you're the comic news guy who's covering all their stuff, and you're like, okay, well, Eric July just came out with the IRA, it made $1 million, and then you get a bunch of angry comments going, you Eric July simp, and I'm like, wait a minute, I just covered this, like I covered his last book. And it's like, well, now it's different. It's like, no, now it's not different. And it's like, okay, Ethan Van Sciver got his Cyberfrog for Talladega. Like, you Ethan Van Sciver simp, what the hell? I thought you were on my team, Eric July. And I'm like, I'm just covering the fact that he did something cool with a comic. That's what we're here to do. And it's a no-win situation. And I've been calling it no man's land because I'm not big enough to overcome that. And so I'm at the point where it's like, if I cover either of them, I'm going to lose subs from the people who are so like one dimensional about it. And it's been crazy. When that all went down, I got people mad at me for just not talking about it even. And they're like, you knew you weren't covering this intentionally. And I'm like, yeah, because it's stupid. Like, yes. And you're stupid for wanting me to cover it. You just want me to go on record so that I can get to some kind of fight so you can like have a joyride with that or something. And I lost a lot of support at that point for a bit. It peaked back up. So like, I mean, what happens is like the people who are like the weirdos obsessed with like you picking a side or whatever, eventually just tune out and go elsewhere where they can find like the train wreck happening. And then you build audience on something a little more important, like the culture war, Warhammer 40K going woke, things like that. These are much bigger stories which impact Sweet Baby Inc. Like all these things are so big, and it's people who really like they want to like cut kids' genitals off so that they can pretend to be other genders. Like they're doing this to
you're
kids.
talking about the paid DLC. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. That's the DLC.
I mean, this is what's happening, and it's like
yet.
Why? Let's be a little more concerned about this, and less concerned about whether I'm friends with Ethan or friends with Eric. That's retarded, you know.
Well, and so one of the, and I'm not going to pretend that I even understand the motivations and all the infighting and stuff on this, but one that really caught me off guard that I didn't even know was a faux pas was this like criticism of using 3D assets as references in books, and even to the point of even like tracing the 3D asset without a lot of extra enhancement. I mean, I've never considered that being like a off the table sort of option for certain aesthetics, but that apparently rubbed a lot of people the wrong. Like, do you care? Should anyone care? Or is
absolutely
that just
not?
It's like autistic?
It's just whether a comic book looks good. Let's. I'm going to pull up a Star Wars Marvel comic for you right now. So here you are. Here's Han Solo in the movie, and then there's Han Solo in the different comic that obviously he just traced this.
So is he in jail now for doing that?
No, he's working at Marvel Comics still on Star Wars Comics because
who do we contact to get this guy thrown in jail?
Fine. Here's Princess Leia, movie, comic, obviously traced. So this is straight tracing, like not even changing anything. And so that's done very regularly in comics. One guy got in trouble. His name's Greg Land. Hold on, let me see if I can find the thing for that, because he got caught tracing, or at least it's tracing porn.
Again, adultoccult.com. If that's your thing,
Yeah.
you're a sicko. If you like that, you're a degenerate, but go to adultoccult.com.
And so let me see if I can find anything on this. Greg Land and tracing. Let's see how this goes.
Okay, so insider baseball, really no one cares if you're tracing 3D objects or using 3D objects.
Not at all, especially if it's beautiful women, because everybody wants to look at that. So here's some Greg Land clearly traced, and I'm fine with that. And then you've got some more clearly traced stuff here. Clearly traced action figure, and that is obviously traced from something very different.
It looks like a bug bite ad. Like she's applying some kind of bug bite lotion to her torso, and maybe another mosquito's biting her on the back in the middle of that.
So there you go. No, but like, yeah, it's you know, I mean, people have used photo references forever. People have used 3D models and a lot of this stuff forever. This is a complete nothing burger, like to the point where it's like, why is it being repeated over and over again? I mean, I don't get it.
Okay, I want to just see if we can start sliding the scale around a little bit and see if any of this changes. So if we've got 3D models and tracing action figures and photos and movie scenes being like fine, what about there has been like a new like DC comics that were using AI to generate some of the panel art and maybe even some of the cover art, and I think that they've retracted that and they're like, okay, we're going to go back and not do AI generated, but that does seem like a very obvious faux pas still. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like someone just straight up AI generating, like, you know, DC Marvel comics?
It pisses off a lot of people, but it doesn't really bother me.
Why not? Why aren't you pissed off with everyone else?
Because I looked at the DC thing and I looked at like the stuff they were accused of with that, and I thought, oh, this looks pretty good. That's all.
You monster.
So
Just looking at the aesthetics and deciding based on that. That's disgusting.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I know, horrible, right?
Meritocracy is one of the worst toxic traits anyone could ever
Right.
come up with.
Yes, that should be banned in 2024. Yeah, all art should be treated as equal, especially my stick figures. I can't even draw right. So, yes.
So I mean, like, I feel like maybe that's an outlier. Like, I would consider you and maybe myself outliers in not having an extreme like anti-passion of AI, specifically in the realm of comics. Not even just in a general sense, but once you get into the niche of comics, it does seem like this evil boogeyman. Like you're inviting the Germans into your house just to like sleep over or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I think it's, again, it just comes down to comic people are socially awkward, inept people who like are angry on the internet all day long, and there's a lot of retards, and so it's like you just like no matter what you say, you're going to be attacked for it. Yeah,
And I do have to just throw one little bone out to all the comic book nerds out there that man, I absolutely identify with what you're saying about like, you know, man children that are still 40s, 50s obsessing over the latest Marvel superhero movies and stuff. And working at Disney and being in Orlando and just being around, like the same thing applies to Disney. Like there's a little like there's a weird thing that happens where it's like, okay, enough with the Disney already. Grow up. But also I remember growing up that some of the kids that I knew that read really read like X-Men and stuff, they typically seem to have like a higher vocabulary. Like they had a little bit more, like a lot of them were sort of in like the gifted and challenge classes and stuff. And a lot of them attributed that to like reading comics and getting into like these esoteric and more advanced concepts of like multi-dimensional, when most people might have been, you know, like, hey, did you know, listen to that new Korn album? And that was like the most intellectually stimulating conversation they might have had with someone versus comics. But there's like maybe a crossover, maybe it's just appealing to the people that like the pretty looky pictures and not necessarily the story. I don't really know.
it depends. Yeah, I mean, I've always been one who cares a little bit more about the writer than the artist, because the artists, like, you know, I mean, if something looks a little wonky on a panel, you can kind of get over that pretty quickly. But if like, you know, they, you know, turned a character bisexual or something, you know, you're kind of like, well, you can't get over that, right? And you can't unsee Superman making out with a you know, pink-haired weird dude who goes by they them, right?
The medical term is twink. Let's be respectful of these people.
And so like I follow the writer a little bit more, and always have. But I mean, there's people who do follow just the art, and I understand that too. I would say that like there's a level of art where it's like you know, there's a professional level of art, and then like, you know, there's this range where it's like it really doesn't matter and it doesn't bother you. And then there's some art that really bothers you, that looks really bad. Let me see. Who can I think of this? It's
Are you gonna start throwing some shade right now?
yeah, I'm gonna start throwing some shade.
Hell yeah.
I don't remember the name of the artist. It's from She-Hulk, and it was the writer on it was who was that? Charles Soule. And let's see. Let me see if I can find some of the bad. Like the art was so bad in this freaking book that it did throw me out. Like
you went from being an active She-Hulk reader to a non-active because of the art.
I read. I wouldn't say like I'm a like She-Hulk's like my like number one. I'm going to go to this, but I like John Byrne's She-Hulk quite a bit. I even like Dan Slott's. I know Dan Slott takes a lot of heat in our circles, but I thought it was pretty good. But this art really sucked. And here it is. I found a Tumblr page of some of it. And you can just kind of see every page kind of looks like this. Let me see if I can find another page just to get to really prove to you that every page kind of looks like this and kind of crappy.
Tumblr sounds like the battlegrounds. Like this is the front lines of where the culture wars used to take place, right?
That's where it used to be. But
where's the battlegrounds now? Is it Twitter?
Then Tumblr art became like the reality, and this is what like Marvel Comics became. It's like, what the hell what's wrong with their face? And you go into here, what's wrong with her face? Like she's puffed up in this bottom panel here, to a level where she looks like she's like, you know, having a allergic reaction to lobster or something, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate the aesthetic, but if that's supposed to be She-Hulk, it looks more like the Jolly Green Giant's like fat little sister.
Yeah. Here's another. Let's see. Here's another example from She-Hulk #3. This is on
It's like a
a
Brussels
website, so we're gonna
sprout.
scroll to this. But my gosh, it like this guy's art is
Oh, that
just
looks good. What
no,
was the
not
one?
that, not that. That's the variant cover. So they trick you they trick you with a variant cover
Oh, I
that
know
looks
that
like
trick
this,
well.
and they
Yeah.
go, oh, and then you go, shit, I want to buy this, and then you look at the inside's this, right?
I would never do that. If you buy any of my comics, anyone listening, I would never entice you with a really awesome variant cover, and then you
Now
open
this
it
guy,
and the art's different.
I really don't remember the name of this guy's art. Who it was? Javier Peludo. That's his name. There he is.
Shots fired.
This guy drive. This guy, like, I mean, I cannot look at his art without like being like horrified. But for the most part, like, there's a range of art, and like I said, some of it's like, if it's all right to whatever, it's fine. There are some artists that's like Alex Ross, and he does like painted, beautiful art. And that level, you buy his book, and it's like looking at an art book, and it's like, ooh, this is pretty. It's different on that level too. So there's like 1% of artists who are like that level. There's like 90% of artists who are like, this is fine. It's not bothering me.
Yeah, it's serviceable.
And then there's
yeah.
and then there's like 10 to 20% of artists down at the bottom who are just like, this is so bad I can't read this book.
Yeah, I might be wrong on this name, but I
it.
want to say that I recently got like a Fantastic Four like hardbound like compendium of some stories that was Alex Ross, and it sold me entirely just on the visuals. Like, I don't even know what the hell any of the story was.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it was like my body was no longer listening to my brain. Like, it was just going on Amazon and downloading and clicking and stuff, because it like spoke to me in such a weird way. So I guess that's I either have a problem, or like this is where I was supposed to be at. But so I wanted to know too, is the Grant Morrison Invisibles, you familiar with this comic series?
I'm familiar with it. I have not read that one though.
Okay, well, I don't want to I wanted to give you a spoiler if you intend on reading it anytime soon.
Go for it.
Okay, so I remember this one is like before woke culture, before culture war, before any of like the modern current thing and current 2024 day became an issue. Grant Morrison had this incredible storyline within the Invisibles where one of the characters is like a South American shaman, and one of the books, like one of the entire trades, it's like 6 issues in this series, is a storyline about going onto like the top of this like stone altar in Peru or something. I'm making up some of the details, and castrating themselves. It was a guy castrating themselves and turning themselves into a female, but it's like in a magical transformative process where they're harnessing like this transformation physically as a sort of like a spiritual, supernatural like it's done, in my opinion, in like a really interesting way. And it had nothing to do with any of the culture war stuff going on now, because I think this is like 2000s or something. It might have even been pre-2000s. But now it's almost like every comic that kind of becomes this thing that they're all like sort of aspiring to, but it's not because it has some really deep, compelling storyline, kind of like Invisibles had, which I guess ultimately, if you read it, I'm just wondering, is that woke? Would that have been like the beginning of woke, or are you allowed to like transition genders within a comic book still and not it be automatically woke?
I think I'd call it proto woke, because Grant Morrison was trying to push those boundaries intentionally like that.
Mm-hmm.
And while he wasn't doing it to like appease the like current crop of like weirdos in the Democratic Party online, he was doing it to be edgy, right? That's the intention of it, and that's like what proto woke in the 90s was. It's like, if you remember the movie Requiem for a Dream, I always like to go with this as one, and it's just like it's shock porn, right? And so you're just supposed to be shocked into stuff, and then the old man's out there with these women who are like on heroin, all fucked up, and you gotta do ass to ass, right? And the intention's actually not to like applaud lesbians. It's actually just to shock you with grossness, right? And that shock you with grossness, I would say, was what's eventually spun into the angry woke, because like they were trying to quote rebel and not be censored and be as edgy as possible. And that eventually led to my edgy as possible is normal. You better accept me for it or else, bigot, very quickly.
I have seen people applaud at that scene just as a counterpoint. So some people do applaud the lesbians. Cool. If you watch it, yeah. So I guess that's a really interesting observation that maybe Grant Morrison being proto-woke, maybe Grant Morrison The Invisibles, one of my favorite comic series ever, is what gave birth to like drag queen story time in the States. Like that's a very real possibility that he helped that trajectory happen.
For sure.
Well, hell, man, I don't know if I should. So I guess that leads to my next question.
By the way, Grant Morrison identifies as a they them now. You know this, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, that actually does not surprise me. It sounds pretty magical. That's a very Crowleyan thing to do, make it about you and all the other people inside of there. But it, like, so here's a follow-up question on that exact note. Like, should I like Invisibles less now, knowing that he put drag queens in elementary schools like down the street from me? Or like, I guess it's a similar question of like, do you stop liking Roman Polanski movies after he did naughty things in a hot tub in Jack Nicholson's house, even though no one ever throws shade at Jack Nicholson? That's a tangent.
I'm not going to tell you what. I'm not going to tell you what to like or not like, but I'm probably not going to buy that.
So you personally, let's say that you come across a book that you loved as a kid, you know, that was like one of your favorites, and then you find out the artist or the writer or someone involved at a very critical level is just like super woke now. They've got, you know, ultimate Trump derangement or whatever you want to fill in. Does that mean that like if you were to go back and reread that book, you wouldn't be able to enjoy it as much because like of the current politics of the person that exists?
Sometimes not. Like, I can read, I would say, a lot of old Mark Waid comics fine, even though I really, really, really dislike him as a person. He's been such an asshole to me over politics, right? And there's a talent level you have to get to for me to like tolerate that, I guess.
Is Mark Waid a they them yet?
Mark Waid's, I don't know. You'd have to ask Zim. I don't know. But I don't want to assume their gender, right? But I don't know. But I by the same token, like I'm not going to pick up his modern current year book because I know he's interjecting that crap more, and I just don't want to deal with it, and I don't want to be disappointed, and I don't want to read a modern day current year book of his book of his without because reading that book would tarnish the old work, if that makes sense. Like the bad work being done currently would tarnish the old more than him being an asshole to me would, right? So, but it depends on the writer. Like, I know, like, let's look. There's some insufferable people out there that are so bad. Like, am I going to give Mags Visagio's book a fair shake? Probably not, right? But I mean, Mags also just doesn't have the talent, that Mark Waid does. So I don't know.
Some of these characters, and this is like a maybe a tangential question, but this is an idea that always floats around in my head. So like some of these characters, let's say Superman is an example. When you see, someone turns Superman literally gay in a comic just for what it seems like kind of not like shock value in the same way that Darren Aronofsky has, Jennifer Connelly do like ass to ass dildo action. Maybe not that level of shock value, but the same amount of like, I'm doing this for the reaction to it, as opposed to I'm doing this for some kind of a story plot line. Does that like exist outside of woke comics? I guess another way of phrasing this is if you wanted to make anti-woke, like what's the version of that? Is it just going back to not doing woke stuff, or is there like an actual pendulum swinging and it's like, no, now all the characters get AR-15s and everybody's having like hetero sex on every page and they're all drinking whatever American
I don't really go that far with things because I feel like if I push that far, like it's just is a little too cheesy for me. What I'm doing is I definitely am putting themes that I feel are overtly right wing into my new books. Like if you read my Overmind comic, for example, it's very clearly a commentary on um, like
Fourth Reich.
the high, yes, no, the hive mind, and people going ballistic as a mob and retarded as a mob, because they're plugged in so much to the internet that it's just embarrassing. And so that's definitely a thing I do with my books. But and I've made characters. Probably I've been throwing in more overtly Christian characters, just as a like I feel like that all fiction kind of used to be that way. Like all good art used to. I mean, if you look at the best art ever, it came from the church. The church commissioned it. But that's been like suppressed in recent times, and because of that, you've also seen not only that, but like Christian art's been thought of as cheesy, bad, stupid in recent times, and that's mainly because of the Christian rock in the 90s, that they try to make alternative rock and be cool, but it's not, right.
They tried though. They gave it their all.
Yeah, they really did. But doing that is just it was cringy, and so then they labeled Christian culture cringy, and that's a problem. So I'm trying to push back on that and trying to create, I'd say I like overtly Christian art that's not cringy, and so that's in there, but not every story. It's like some stories I got some flack the other day because like I'm making a story that's actually kind of centered around astrology, and like
that's very anti-Christian. You're gonna attract some ire for that.
So the astrology, it's kind of, I mean, there's some neat stuff to it. Like it's just clusters of stars, and there's been thoughts about things. And if you get into conspiracy theories about
we don't
things,
do that
I know you would never do here. Yeah. They talk about things. If you look at like they'll talk about all the way back to the Bible as if there's some code in it through astrology. And they're like, well, Jesus said, I'll be with you till the end of the age. And since Jesus, fed many with the fish, and the sign of the fish is a Christian thing, he meant the Pisces age, and that something different's going to happen in the age of Aquarius as that comes, right? And it's like, and the ages are every 2,000 years roughly or so. So I find that silly and fun. And so
which part do you find silly? The application of like saying the two fishes is Pisces, is that the silly part, or is getting angry at it the silly part? Are they both the silly part?
I mean, it's a combo. It's kind of weird. I don't know. But
because I mean, my audience considered, I do think there's a large reception to the concept of astrotheology, and that a lot of ancient texts and biblical stories were sort of rehashing of astral tales.
Okay, well, I mean, we could.
Well, so let me ask you, out of the I don't even know what side I'm on, but out of the 40,000 flavors of Christianity, do you ascribe to one, or are you just Christian in general?
Yeah, Catholic, because I just go as far back.
Roman Catholic, real Catholic, Roman Catholic.
Yes,
okay.
Correct.
None of that fake Catholic crap.
None of that fake Catholic crap. So, yeah, but I'm writing a fantasy story where, if we're looking at all these like clusters of stars and all that, well, it makes sense that there's like different realms and stuff like that are kind of thematically made by things. And so my story, The Astromancer, is going to be something where she can transport between these worlds. And there's a threat going on to all of them that a bad guy's trying to really screw with all of reality. And that's how I'm kind of playing it. And so, yeah, it's got a theme of I guess you'd call it astrology, but is it in the way that you would picture it, or am I just taking those themes and doing something else with it? That's what I'm trying to do. So I don't know. I just thought it was fun. So, and that's why I'm doing it. So,
But you made a good point too about how like Christian content is kind of just considered lame. It's been labeled lame by a bunch of different, and I don't think it's just limited to the weird 90s rock. If anything, that might have been the closest that Christianity has come to cool in culture, was that they hosted a lot of like hardcore concerts and stuff in the 90s, but a lot of those bands end up like outgrowing the Christian niche once they like get some traction. But there's one in the realm of comics, and I guess being a Roman Catholic, I also was raised Roman Catholic, so we also kind of get some of the like weird hate from like, you guys are worshiping idols and, you know, like weird statues and stuff. But there's a guy, Jack T. Chick, and the Chick Tracks. You familiar with
those
Chick
are
Tracks?
fun. I love them.
So on paper, in a very technical sense, Jack Chick was the most prolific comic writer, creator, author in history, period, like worldwide.
Yes.
If you add up every Jack T. Chick track that was ever produced and sent out anywhere, especially if you consider like the international, like no one's even coming close to Jack T. Chick when it comes to delivering independent comics on an international market. But because Jack T. Chick are like these religious pamphlets, they don't ever get considered as comic books, and he gets none of the credit, because if he got the credit for being a Christian comic book author, again, he'd be the most prolific of all time. He'd be in all the books. You'd have to study him, but he was kind of thrown into this weird, wacky corner where it's like, okay, that doesn't really count. That's not really comics because it has this weird Christian message. So is that straw man true? Is Jack T. Chick, are those comic books? Should he be considered?
Yeah, and they're awesome. They're awesome.
How about the Crusaders? Are you all in on the Crusaders comics too?
Oh, the Archie ones?
Well, the Crusader comics, I believe, were Jack T. Chick's full-sized floppies, like the actual color 20-page that he started, that went into like the Jesuits and Father.
Oh no, I haven't read those. No, but the Archie Comics decided to start a line, and they were like a Christian company originally, and they had a superhero line called the Crusaders also, and they're 40s and 50s cheesy, but they're pretty fun. So, yeah.
Is there any non-cringe Christian content being produced today?
Yeah, my books.
Well, so, I mean, clearly that's the obvious answer.
Yeah, there's a guy, John C. Wright, in the science fiction realm, who writes. He's probably the best writer alive, and he's just unheard of by a lot of people because, he's a conservative Christian, so he's not allowed to be heard of by people. And his level of writing is so beyond anybody else's. It's incredible, and his books are really good. The Green Knights Squire, I don't remember the title. It's been a few years since I've read it. Was excellent. And he's got a lot of books out there that are very much worth reading. Let's see, Brian Niemeyer is another wonderful science fiction writer who does wonderful Christian content also. And it's not cheesy in the least. It's just excellent. His stuff's like kind of like, if you like Dune and that kind of thing, that you'd be into that. What I want to avoid is I've seen, Christian comics where it's like, it's a superhero named the Cross, and he's in like, it's a black dude in tight spandex, and like he's got a cross on his dick, right? So it's like you're sold. And so those type of things kind of make me go, ooh. But yeah, it's pretty easy to like tell a good story that has moral values, because I mean, if you look at old storytelling, all of it was like making a point with a moral value, which is used to be sane, and now it's just about like the moral value doesn't exist anymore. All that matters is what you identify as, and that's actually the thing that's insane and cringy.
Do you think that there's any chance of like the right wing, or conservatism? I struggle with like finding the right like big bucket name for this, but the anti-woke, right wing, conservative, whatever you want to call it, will they ever gain traction over the comics world, over any world again? Or is it like they got to go and make their own thing? Like is the standard Diamond style distribution, walk up to a random comic shop in a new town, Are you always just going to expect that it's going to be leaning one way versus the other?
Oh yeah, I mean, it has been. The whole model of comic shops was started by Marvel and DC in the 80s to get away from newsstands so they can control their own distribution networks. And so when they did that, they created this collectible market where they were kind of in charge. And there was, they weren't really all that in charge back then because they weren't owned by Disney and Warner Brothers with like the biggest budgets ever. But as more comics moved into that, what they did is decided to flood the stands. And when they did, and we're producing 80, 100 comics each per month, well, you can, as a kid with an allowance, you can only collect like what, 5, maybe 10 if you're really lucky. And so you're going to then shun all the other stuff out there. And slowly all the other companies went out of business and they became this duopoly just in charge of this little niche market of comic shops, which wasn't all that niche in the 90s. But once all that collapsed on itself, it becomes really niche, and then there's nothing else there. So they control all of comic shops, and there's not many of them left. There used to be like 3,000 comic shops really that carried comics as its main sort of source of income. Now we're talking maybe there's 500 left. There's probably still 3,000 comic shops, but they're really game shops or Funko Pop shops or things like that. There's only 500.
Yeah, that hurts. I heard that one really deep that you just said that.
Yeah, there's really only 500 comic shops left that are like really comic centric. With you can peruse the back issues and all the comics are on the stands. That's it. There's just 500 of them left. And so Marvel and DC are 80-90% of what sells there, and that's 80-90% of the product they carry. You can go into Diamond with your one book, but it's just not worth it.
Yeah, and another maybe a little bit of insider baseball that I think I have this correct, but I haven't been able to do Diamond just because it is terrifying on like all the different things that can go wrong with like a straight up distribution. But the way that I've understood is that Diamond and the other distributors, but Diamond being one of the big ones, they've kind of got this agreement with shops that they've got to order a certain amount every single month. Say it's like 10 grand or 12 grand or 20 grand or something. So if they ever don't order that much, now all of a sudden they can't carry Marvel and DC. They get kicked out of the club. So there's this incentive to that they always have to be buying stuff up through Diamond. And this is what kind of excludes the little guys like me that come and like knock on the door and try and solicit like, hey, do you got shelf space to put this indie book that's going to be a pain in the ass to track and everything else? And it's like, no, because now all of a sudden we don't have room for the things that we're sort of being like pressured to buy against our will. They might not even want to carry some of the stuff, but they've got to constantly be buying. It's almost like a pyramid scheme in a weird way.
Yes, it very much is. And that's what happens when you get into monopolies or duopolies. I mean, it really becomes a problem. But
is there any solution to that? Or because it sounds like now Diamond,
why care? I mean, we've had the internet for 30 years now. Like, I mean, do you really go into physical stores to buy anything else except for your groceries right down the street at this point? Like, why is that? It's just a nostalgia thing, caring about even that. So the model's flawed. It's stupid. Going through a distributor middleman is flawed and stupid. Like, I mean, you can go direct to customers and you have been able to have that ability for like 20 years. It's not even new. So why not just do that? I mean, I just sold, over 100 books on my web store this week, just because like I had some videos that went viral on YouTube, like, and I don't even have a new book out. So it's and that those 100 books with me getting all of the income. Well, gosh, that's a pretty good month right there. Whereas like I need to sell 1,000 through Diamond just to get that same deal, and I'd have to have a new book out to do that, right? So, which covers art costs and all these other things along with it. So, no, the internet's revolutionized everything to where it's just these are just dinosaurs just that are still walking.
So, do you have any desire to have your books in brick and mortars at this point, or is it not even worth the overhead for you?
Don't care. Yeah.
So are brick and mortar comic shops, are they just like the video rental shops just waiting to fizzle out and die at this point?
Yes, 100%.
It's a little rough, but I guess I also understand because
I'm honest.
even when I go into a comic shop as a consumer, not even trying to like hawk my wares or anything, Man, more often than not, and I am not going to mention any names. There's actually some amazing comics. Actually, yeah, Blackbird Comics is one of the best comic shops that I know of in my area in like Central Florida. But when I went over across the different places of the country, so many times I'd go into a comic shop and I really felt like I just walked into someone's like private room, and like now I'm like irritating them that they got to stop what they were doing and make sure that I'm not like knocking over like a soda or something. And it's just like anything they can do to get me out. And it's weird because I remembered growing up in this weird nostalgia space, but like going to the comic place was kind of where you would get like recommendations, like what are the other cool things that are coming out and stuff. And I guess that part is gone with the internet, but like, I don't know. I mean, it seems a little bit scary that it just relies entirely on the internet, because now all of a sudden the device is, you can't use Amazon. So now you're just in the noise when you got to start a Twitter beef in order to get people to know that you've got a comic.
No, it's really hard. You do have to kind of build your own platform. And how to do that? I mean, you've got a pretty decent YouTube channel that's starting. I mean, it's like you've got 5,000. That's way better than most people have when they're just like looking to like put a book out. So
yeah, if you go to russiabot.com and use the code paranoid, you can get 5,000 followers like overnight.
Excellent.
It's super easy.
I will do that tonight. Thank you.
Okay. It doesn't mess with the algorithm at all. Yeah.
At all. Right. But that's kind of how it is. I mean, you either have to figure out how to get through on Instagram or get through on X or get through here. Otherwise, like, there's not much you can do.
What about comic conventions?
I think that can work. It's just like if you have every weekend to set up at shows and travel around the country, and then you have to build that brand for 2-3 years doing that. I mean, if you have the capability to do that right out the gate, that means you're retired or independently wealthy at this point, I think. Right.
Yeah, that's, I mean, honestly, it's holding me back. I don't understand how anyone could say like MegaCon here in Orlando, like even not having to worry about travel and hotel, like I would have to sell thousands of books in the span of 3 days just to pay off the table and the electric and all of the like the ancillary stuff to get that together. And I just can't figure out how the hell someone sets up and makes profit at one of these. I mean,
I've done it at a few locally. When I have
how much are we talking, like $200 tables or something?
I've gone from $100 tables to $500 tables.
Okay.
And at the $500 table, when I actually did make a decent profit that weekend, I had probably 10 books out already at that point. So I had a huge selection on my table, and everybody, oh, I like this one. Well, that's good. You can get that one, and I went with graphic novels only and books only. And I just sold them all for $20 each. So I didn't have any like $5 things hanging around, like, cause if somebody wants to check you out for $5, well, if that same person would check you out for $20, like, you shouldn't give them the option, especially at a table like that, because that $5 is never going to add up to your table cost. Right. And so that did pretty well for me. But like when I had like 1 or 2 books, like, and they were single issues and things like that, even at $100 table, it was like really scraping. It was really difficult, like, to even get close to breaking even. So you have to already have a back catalog to really do it. It helps if you're an artist. And a lot of the people who do this are artists, because you can sell sketches to people.
So this is actually a point of contention in my mind, man. This is one that I'm willing to go on a tiny little rant about, but it's like, as an independent, small publisher or something, I roll up, even if I get an artist alley table and it's only like $100 or whatever, like I'm kind of limited to selling the things that took maybe years to produce and print and everything. And there's almost like this looking the other way of like the guy next to you can just draw licensed IP, but it's unlicensed. Like they can draw Batman and they can draw Superman, they can draw Spider-Man and charge 20, 30, 40, 60, whatever they want for it. But it's like, I can't go and just sell a print of Spider-Man or of Superman, because now it's copyright infringement and trademark infringement. And technically artist alleys that are drawing Superman in their style, if they didn't get licensed from, or am I wrong about this? But it's almost like a cheat code.
No, and by the way, a lot of people do sell prints of their own Spider-Man art and things like that at these conventions. And yeah, I guess you can get some cease and desist or something, but they all do it. I mean, that's the way they make money.
So it's just like a it's illegal
Yeah.
but decriminalized in a way.
It kind of is, yeah. I mean, that's a standard thing for conventions for sure.
Oh, 100%. And that's usually the answer of like, how does anyone afford it? Oh, because you can take a Sharpie and draw Superman and sell it for $60. And that was all the overhead essentially. So that's how a lot of people can make their money back and then become profitable versus setting up with 20 different issues of different comics that took, like countless thousands of dollars to produce and print.
Yes.
So, okay, so brick and mortar comic shops, they're going the way of VHS rental stores.
Yeah.
Comic conventions maybe still have some value. And is this just as promotional means mostly?
A little bit. Yeah. I wouldn't say it's like you're going to be your main thing, but like even a lot of what you get out of conventions, interacting with fans and people remembering, and you could just do on YouTube too with live streams, right? And so that's how all of these are like mini conventions. This isn't being pre-recorded and all that, but if this was live, we'd have a chat and we'd be interacting with them, and it kind of is a mini convention at that point, right? So, the internet makes it a lot easier to just do it from the comfort of your own laptop.
Okay, I mean, I like the idea that maybe we're not beholden to brick and mortars anymore, and I don't even dislike brick and mortars. I still think that there might be some relevance for them, but not under the weird diamond model where they're just outlets for Marvel and DC and like the big ones. I don't know. Like, would a straight up indie brick and mortar even work, or would it fail the exact same way, regardless of all this?
Yeah, an indie brick and mortar would not. You wouldn't have the customer base in order to get people in there. So what gets people in the comic shops? When I go into a comic shop pretty much every week, and
Funko Pops. I mean,
it's Funko Pops.
Yeah.
And your Funko Pop of my Overmind comic, is that really going to sell anything if I do a knockoff Funko Pop? No. The reason the Funko Pops sell is because a Batman simp wants the limited edition Batman one, and it's stupid that they do, but that's how the market works. So,
well, and like Marvel and DC, and I don't know if this is accurate, so I'd like to get your input on whether this sounds realistic or not. But that when you were describing, the big two are flooding the market every week or every month with 80 new titles, and if you wanted them all, you wouldn't be able to afford them all, or at least it wouldn't be reasonable to buy them all. But that it's almost been pitched as like a loss leader. Like they can afford to lose money on all these comics that are pounding out because they can make it back on lunch bags and backpacks and t-shirts and Happy Meal toys and movies and stuff, which is not an avenue that almost anyone else can without those resources. Is any of that accurate, or would comics that are loss leaders just get pulled immediately?
Comics that are loss leaders will just get pulled immediately. It just doesn't work. I mean, it's really unfortunate, but people don't check things out. And this is true. And like, if you just go to books too, and I have like 19 novels out in addition to my comics, and it's like there's people. I have one series. That's my dog. Sorry about that. There's one series that sold like 30,000 copies. And so you'd think, wow, I have 30,000 fans now. They're going to check out my other stuff. Absolutely not. I've got, especially if you go to a different genre. So I've got, and that's a steampunk series. So my sci-fi series, they sell several thousand copies each still. But that's their own people in the sci-fi, and the steampunk people didn't go over and check out sci-fi. And I wrote a romance novel, and the sci-fi people even checked out of that just because they didn't even just trust me that my writing was good because they know my other stuff and they like my other stuff. They're like, well, why didn't you just write a new sci-fi novel in this series? And that's what you get when you interact with people. It's like, well, when's your next steampunk series book? When's your next sci-fi series book? When's your next Overmind book? They're there for that series only. And if you do something else, like even in a book space, like they don't come back. So that's the thing. It's like, oh, they walk in for Ultimate Spider-Man because that's awesome. Well, if Ultimate Spider-Man goes to shit and gets replaced by a bisexual lesbian trans person or something, and they all stop buying Spider-Man, they don't come back into the comic shop to check out a random indie book or whatever. Like they just leave comics and they quit. And that's how it works, unfortunately. It's a big black pill. I'm sorry.
Comics is just nonstop black pill over here. Although
it is.
So what keeps you in comics despite just what sounds like a nonstop uphill battle on all fronts?
It is a nonstop uphill battle. I just like it, and I like writing them. For me as a writer, I do novels, usually 2, 3, 4 a year. That's how many novels I can put out in a year, like without killing myself. A comic script, I can write a comic script in like a week. So if I have like a zillion ideas, well, I can do a comic script, once every month, and I could have 12 comics scripted while I'm waiting on art. And that way I'm writing my novels in between, and I get all these ideas that I have out and made a lot faster. And so that allows me the creative flexibility to do more things, experiment in different genres and things like that without really, like my romance novel. Like I probably spent half a year on writing a romance novel because I like had to train myself onto writing a new genre at that, and it didn't sell. And it's like, ooh, well, maybe I shouldn't have just not done what the audience wanted and spent half a year on that, right? I knew that the audience didn't want that, but I thought maybe they'll just trust me, right? And comics kind of allows me a lot more flexibility and creative freedom.
Yeah, okay. I like that concept, and I've also sort of noticed that too. People like laser focus on one particular theme and only care about that one theme, even though it's like, look at all this other stuff that's like so cool and made by the same people and kind of like the same philosophy. But
that's right. Yeah, it's really
don't fight the customer if they're telling you what they want. Just give them that thing, I guess.
J.K. Rowling, can you name a book of hers that's not in the Harry Potter series?
Does she? I didn't think she had any others. I thought that was
she does exactly. Yeah, she does, and that's exactly the point. Yes.
All right. Here, I've got a little segment here that I'm just going to roll into. I'll explain it after a second.
Hey, conspiracy buffs! I double dare you to take some PCP, the Paranormal Conspiracy Probe. On your marks, get set, and go.
All right, rules are really simple. I'm just going to mention a certain topic, and you're just going to give me a 1 to 10 rating on how credible you think that is. 1 being you don't believe it, 10 being that you do believe it. Is that pretty much sense? All right. So, and if you want to clarify and get into detail, we'll do that after we get some of these ratings out, just to get a temperature check. So I got to lead it off with flat Earth. How much credit do you give the idea that the Earth is flat?
1.
What about dinosaurs as we're conventionally taught about them in school?
Like, did they exist?
Yeah, like if you went into the Museum of Natural History and you see a big Tyrannosaurus Rex or whatever, even if the bones aren't real, even if they're swapped out, like did that creature somewhat exist, or is it a complete fabrication by people that were just pulling one over on the system?
That's interesting because globally, I think their dinosaurs existed, and I'd say it's a 10. But did the specific Tyrannosaurus Rex creature specifically exist as they put it together? I think that's like a 4, right?
Okay, so, but there's a chance that somebody out of dumb luck could have arranged the bones in the correct configuration and put that in a museum and called it a dinosaur, and that have been a 10?
Yeah, sure.
What about fire-breathing and flying dragons? Having ever existed?
Ever existed? 3.
What about Bigfoot?
6.
What about 9/11 being an inside job?
10.
What about a Building 7 fell from heat?
1.
They buried Osama bin Laden at sea out of respect to his culture.
1.
Prince Albert doesn't sweat.
Interesting. I don't know enough about that to give it a rating.
Jeffrey Epstein killed himself.
1.
Ghislaine Maxwell will kill herself.
Ooh. She's got a deal, so I think 10.
George R.R. Martin's going to finish his book series
1
before he dies. That's a 1. And then I guess aliens, just little gray men aliens.
They're demons.
Yeah. Well, how about demons? 1 to 10.
10. Yes.
About angels? Do you give angels a 10 too?
10.
And then here, final one. If I go onto Amazon and I order the top 3, how to summon a demon for dummies books, and they're all print on demand, right? They didn't come from like some laboratory somewhere. They get printed at the factory, shipped directly to me by a drone. No humans ever touched it. 1 to 10, I can actually summon a demon at some point just from referencing these books that I bought on Amazon.
I think the intent is a big deal, so probably a 7.
So if you intend to summon a demon and then you order the books, the intent might be as enough as you need, regardless of the books that you're ordering, maybe.
Yes.
So I want to rewind just back to the flat Earth. That was a quick one, which is fine. And actually, I think we might be on the same page of this. But I want to know what your rationale is against flat Earth. Have you seen the curve?
You can literally see the curvature. Yes.
But how do you know that's not just an optical illusion? Like that the curve that you're seeing is not from a reconstruction of an amalgamation of different input.
Occam's razor is why. Because I'm not retarded.
We're not a friends of Occam's razor in this club here.
Oh well.
So, the other thing too that I've found an interesting correlation, which doesn't hold up always clearly here, but people that tend to identify strongly with being conservative or in particular Christian also seem way more open to the flat Earth concept, because there seems to be something inherent within flat Earth that reconnects humans with their creator and having a much bigger role. Because the second you're on a sphere and a little pale blue dot in the middle of nowhere, it sort of detaches you from, or this is the rationale that I've heard presented, that it detaches you from God, and now it's like you're no different than the amoebas and the dinosaurs and the whatever. But if there's flat Earth, now all of a sudden, like, humans do have full domain, like that we have full control, that we were kind of like these special snowflakes. So why don't you think we're special snowflakes?
Oh, we are.
Fair point.
Yeah.
Is there any other way that people can, I guess, support doing anti-woke comic? Is there any way that people can help lift comics out of this, aside from obviously going to paranoidamerican.com and delarose.com and buying up all the books? What else, like, is there, should they be donating to the NRA? Should they be like supporting their local Antifa chapter? I assume that's the one that you're going to go with.
Absolutely. I mean, no, independent comics. I mean, being independent is not a monolith. There's not going to be like a, this is the list, like, kind of thing. Like, you're gonna have to find who you like and whatever it is. Hopefully you like me. And you'll, even though I just trashed you as comic readers for the last hour. You'll just have to find what works for you you can't. I mean, the difficult part for us as creators is just getting found. And that's about it. I mean, you can put together an indie tracker. I did that for a while and I actually got heat for doing that. And I got people,
what was the heat, man? Cause that's in my mind. It's like, what if there was like some like link share thing? I
got somebody mad at me. There's a few link share things, and they really, again, like, people just don't go to them. So it doesn't matter, right? I mean, you could put up whatever you want. If people don't go to it, they don't go to it. You have to have a draw, right? And that's why it's like, it works like this in every industry, by the way. Every retail center, like, if you look at any retail center for like where there's stores and stuff like that, you have your like little like, pedicure place and like some Indian restaurant and all these weird little things, and all of them are not a draw. Like, but there's a grocery store there. That's the draw. And once people are there for the grocery store, they're like, you know what, I'm going to pick up takeout to go, or I'm going to get my toes done while they're there, or they since they went to the grocery store yesterday, they remember that place was there and they go for it because of that. It's called an anchor tenant in the real estate industry, and the anchor is what anchors people and brings them there and brings all the little community around it. And so you do need kind of like a bigger Ethan Van Sciver or whatever to promote the smaller books. I mean, Ethan used to do that a lot more, and he's being a lot more insular these days for different reasons. And there's not a lot of that going on. But that's the best way to do it, is to have a bigger guy kind of a razor fist or whatever, say these are my guys, and that's how it goes. I'm hoping I can get big enough to do that, and I would love to. I do my best to promote as many independent projects as I possibly can. It's difficult. I try to post them on Fandom Pulse, but again, like I can post like when you got a book coming out on Fandom Pulse, that's cool. That might get 100 clicks. But if I post about, the gay Green Lantern, it's going to get 3,000 clicks. Right. So I got to balance that with stuff that's actually going to bring people to the site also. So that's how I do things on this level. As far as person who's just not even trying to be a content creator and all that, just share everything, share the projects, get them out there. The more shares they are, if you just like retweet my subscribe star on my Twitter, like that tells the Twitter algorithm more people and it shows it to more people. And the problem we have is not getting seen. So that's what we need.
And are there like, I guess, would conspiracy theories be included in in your mind, right wing and conservatism and stuff? Because for the longest time, when I started doing conspiracy theory books, it was very apolitical. Like you could have been Antifa, you could have been, absolutely pro Jack T. Chick style. It was sort of like a non-political delineation. But now you say conspiracy theorist, and you're voting for Trump. Essentially, that's kind of the connotation now, and I almost feel like that's pushed me into like the conservative space just because. I identify, I guess, with this topic that has been sort of either co-opted or like the inverse of co-opted, where it's like hot potatoed into this like conservative realm. Is that any accuracy to that? Do you see that too?
It really has, and I guess that's just mainly because most of the conspiracies, like stuff about Epstein and 9/11. What happened is like the left really solidified all the like globalist evil Illuminati around themselves. I feel like there used to be a mix of them, right? I feel like back in the day, like George Bush is part of that, right?
Well, he's neocon. He's not even really.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That them's fighting words in the political realm, but like George Bush is a Republican. Come on, dude.
But in 2000, he was like the conservative guy you were going to vote for as a conservative, right? And so, like,
I voted for Gore, sir. I wanted to save this country.
Oh, geez. But that's what really got pushed out, was anybody like kind of on the right in that Illuminati space, I guess, which I think is very real. And so it became they pushed themselves leftist, and they decided they're their little leftist club. And so when they do their little weird conspiracy things, I mean, at this point, the only people who notice are us. And since the news is so siloed on the internet, that's all that it only gets out to a certain amount of people. And gosh, there's people don't know that on Epstein. If you talk to an average Democrat, you can't talk to them about Epstein. They don't know. You can't talk to them about 9/11. So, yeah,
I find it's better to just talk about like which booster you're on.
Yeah,
and
right.
Then, like that's just something that you can usually commiserate over.
And then you're happy over there. That my last like science fiction novel I came out with is called The Immortal Edge, and that's a commentary on the the jab.
The thing that we must not say.
Totally safe and effective, chat.
So, all right. I mean, I want to be mindful of your time. You've gave me a whole bunch of really cool insight. I guess that we're going to be meeting up at the docks after midnight to start burning down the rest of the brick-and-mortar comic stores and just put them all out of their misery. So if anyone wants to join,
letting it happen.
Bring your own pitchfork, bring your own Molotov cocktails, but we're going to go ham. So they brought it on themselves. So you've got a litany of different books. You mentioned Overmind a couple times. You've got Crystal Conspiracy, Cosmic Warrior, Clockwork Dancer, Flying Sparks, Top Griff. Knowing that the people that are watching you through my channel, at least, are absolute schizoids that believe in reptilian shapeshifters, and that Jeffrey Epstein was like a holographic demon entity sent here to reinvigorate a new wave of eugenics. What books would you recommend to them?
I would just start here, because if you're checking this out, you're probably going to buy one book, if any. Get Overmind, and I've got this directly on my web store, so there's no third party thing, and it's all connected through. Like if you are conspiracy minded and for some reason still use PayPal, I've even got PayPal and stuff on there. Very easy, and I've even got it digitally. If you're so scared that you don't even want to put an address in, you can get a PDF version on here too. So this is definitely a book that you will resonate with, and the art's fantastic. The story is like really punched up, and since I've had so much experience by the time I wrote this, I really think that like this is just a cut above, and you'll like my other stuff too. But this is, if you like this, this will be the one where you'll be like, okay, I understand what JDA is doing, so I'm going to check out his other stuff. I think this is the spot to go.
What kind of rating DEI wise are we talking about on this book? 1 to 10.
It's got a chick. It's not gay, so I put a chick in it.
So maybe a 2, 3.
Yeah. So she does have large tracts of land, right? And
So
she is
2.
yeah. So 2, but she's also a redhead. I put in intentionally
1.
a redhead since so maybe it's a 1 now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, though, you are setting yourself up for a badass Disney remake at some point by incorporating. I've been doing that with all my comics now too. I exclusively do white redheads just because they seem to be like they're looking for the white redheads to replace and adapt. So why not?
Just a half shaved head black woman will be the one who plays her in the movie. It's gonna be great.
If they can replace my all-time sweetheart Domino with whatever they did in the Deadpool movie, then they can do anything.
That's true.
So, all right. Well, thanks for coming by, letting me poke your brain about a little bit of this stuff. I'll post your links and everything down in the comments. People can go and grab your stuff. Let everyone know one last time where they can go and find you and social medias and everything else.
Yes. All right. You can find me on 4chan.org/Paul. And
Nice.
I'm the one that says anonymous. That's me.
That's right, it's Illuminati, the adult-only comic series from Paranoid American, where esoterica meets erotica. Over 80 pages of history fully exposed. This is for adults only. Get your copy now at adultoccult.com.
Paranoid. Yo. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane. Paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Matters not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when a beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.